Hey, how's it going, guys? So in today's video, we are going to be discussing tanks. All about tanks, going to be in depth on how to mod them, what teams they're good on, how to mod them differently in different types of teams, and what you should look for when you're going up against tanks that are modded a certain way. So sit back and relax. This is going to probably be a relatively long video, so I will provide timestamps down in the description, organized by faction. So if you're wanting to jump to a different faction or a different character, you can just look down there and that will be provided for you. We'll be discussing different timelines of where you are in the game. So for example, how you mod one tank may be different if you're in the beginning part of the game, meaning like less than 2 to 3 mil GP, whereas you would mod, like Malik a different way based off 5+ mil GP. It just depends on what type of teams you're facing. For example, if you're facing Kylo Ren, or if you're not facing Galactic Legends, then you'd mod your Malik differently. So, also full disclaimer, this is my personal knowledge, and if you do have a suggestion on modding of a tank, do let me know, as this is from my personal experience of almost 3 years of the game, and a lot of different team compositions that I have personally used. Without further ado, I will begin with 501st. As you can see, this is the typical team you will see with gas. From my experience, the longer 5 survives, the better, whether that's offense or defense. Also, if you do want to run your 5s and gas team on offense, then I would suggest running him with some offense stats. But for me personally, I like to have him just survive a very long time, so I have mine modded for 6 defense mods with protection on everything. And the reason I have him modded for pure defense is mainly because he has a high base defense percentage in armor, and also if I wanted to place him on defense last minute, like in GAC or something, then I don't have to change my mods, because everyone goes for your 5s, obviously, because you don't want to proc that sacrifice, and the longer he lives, the better. And offensively, if one of your troopers dies and you get the sacrifice, then the rest of your clones are going to be extremely tanky. Also, looking for some good secondary offense mods would not hurt as well. Or if you don't want to run full tank, I would suggest 2 or 3 protection percentages and then an offense percentage to give him some offense if you're running him or gas on offense. This is a typical bounty hunter team you are going to see. I run my Bosk with speed and tenacity. The reason why you want him to be relatively fast as well as a lot of tenacity is because if he gets ability blocked, if he gets buff immunity shocked, that could really damage your taunting. Or for example, stunned or something like that, then he's not going to be as useful. But if he can resist that, that'd be awesome, as well as his leader ability does provide some good tenacity. As you can see at the top, it's 50%. So it's technically 138% tenacity, which is pretty huge. Also, being that personally, if you watch my videos, you'll know I love running Bosk lead versus Night Sisters, and him being the fastest is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of the Bosk lead working. So he is going to open up with Taunt, which then provides him the ability to have Frenzy. Frenzy is meaning like if another bounty hunter uses a special ability, he gets 100% TM. So then Django goes second at 305. So if you remembered, he was 306. Then he goes and either one-shots a Night Sister or applies burn. Bosk will then go a second time, right again, and be able to do a mass assist. So that is why you want Bosk with some speed, so he gets to go first and have 3 reset cooldowns, which is pretty huge on your Bosk. Again, tenacity is pretty big, because for JTR, if you set yours on defense and a JTR wants to do her mind tricks, if you can resist those, you are sitting pretty. So that is good there. So Grievous, I will go more in depth of Magna Guard and B2 when I talk about the Watt compositions. I have a section at the end that talks about all different ways you want to mod your tanks when you add Watt in there. But for Separatist Droids, the main two people that you need to mod this way is Magna Guard and B2. You really need to focus on the fact that IG-88 needs to be healthier, meaning tankier than B2, which means higher health and protection combined. Going against Magna Guard, if you're running Jedi, if you're running Padme, it doesn't, I mean, Night Sisters, whatever you're going against him, if he continues to taunt, that could cause some problems and you won't be able to get to characters that you want. So I personally like running Tenacity on him. By the way, Tenacity is probably the absolute best stat line you can have on any tank. When in doubt, put Tenacity on them because it's fantastic. Anyways, I like running a critical avoidance arrow on Magna Guard with protection. Speed is not relatively important on your Magna Guard as long as he has pretty decent protection, as well as, I mean, I like critical avoidance, but you don't have to have a critical avoidance arrow as long as he's very tanky. But I do like and recommend at least 100k protection. Of course, I have gear 13, so if you don't have gear 13, you're not going to get to that threshold. But get him as tanky as possible with some decent tenacity. For example, if I'm running Jedi against Magna Guard and I'm trying to put buff immunity from my Bastila onto this Magna Guard and he resists it, then he's still going to taunt. Or if I'm trying to do daze, for example, like if you're running gas and you try to daze so he's not going to, counterattack, then, and if he resists, that's huge. So yeah, anyways, tenacity. So then B2, you need to make sure he's not as tanky as Magna Guard. The reason I say this is because when your Grievous falls underneath 100% HP, the tankiest droid ally will get that mark ability. You want that to be Magna Guard. You do not want that to be B2. If B2 is tankier than Magna, he will receive that mark. And for everyone who knows to play against Grievous, you need to take out B2 first. Of course, that's different when Watt is in the picture, but we'll get to that later. And so therefore, you want B2 to not be as tanky. And actually, you can pretty much do that with, again, a critical avoidance arrow protection. And so this primary stat can change depending on what mods you have. So for example, as you can see in my secondary stats here, I have a lot of potency and a lot of tenacity. I try to get that on a lot of my stats on these, especially like this is tenacity. You can see tenacity here and potency and tenacity. The goal for your B2, of course, is to be less tanky, which mine is. Speed doesn't matter, he's going to get reset, but you want to get above 100% potency and 100% tenacity. I recommend 110% both, but of course that's not doable for a lot of people. So for example, I have a tenacity cross with a potency primary stat. Then I have 2 defense, 2 tenacity, and 2 potency. Running that 2 defense helps him be a little bit tankier even without the huge protection pool. So just get him relatively defensive oriented. And so as his armor, as you can see, is at pretty much 68%, critical avoidance, tenacity, potency, and pretty dang healthy. So that is what I would suggest on those 2 tanks. Next, we have Kylo Ren. So the modding on these 501st teams are different depending on if you have Kylo or if you don't. I'm talking Supreme Leader here. So first I'm going to go on the in-depth modding on if you have Kylo. So for those of you who do know the counters to Kylo, you need a lot of potency because if you don't land your shock on the counters to Kylo, then you're kind of screwed. this is saying this is for encounters that are not included with Jedi Knight Luke. Jedi Knight Luke doesn't matter if you have tenacity or defense or whatever. Luke is just Luke. So for example, a Vader counter or Trig counter or Darth Revan counter require a lot of dots or shocks to land. And so tanks in this team, I like to provide my tanks with some decent tenacity. So before I go into this, I just want to reiterate that my mods are not absolutely perfect. Obviously, certain characters have priority of getting my better mods over others, but this is what I have so far, and then I'll talk about what I would suggest. So what I would suggest is a lot more HP. For example, I'd probably recommend, see like this, a faster HP primary stat with HP mod. So I personally would recommend 4 or 2 HP mods. So like 4 HP mods and 2 tenacity, or 4 tenacity and 2 HP with a 6 dot HP percentage here, 6 dot HP percentage here, and a 6 dot here. That would be my optimal suggestion. Obviously, mods are not always perfect, and so I have to do with what I have, and this is what I have for now. But that is what I'd recommend. Try to get him close to 100k HP, if not more, and try to get him to 100% tenacity, if not close to it. So then First Order Stormtrooper, for those of you who don't know, he gains a lot, or gives out a lot of turn meter to your allies. And so I valued his tenacity more than I valued my crews. And so, because if he gets ability blocked or shocked, he might be screwed. So I gave him a lot of protection, and look at that, 160% tenacity. So I ran a protection arrow, protection triangle, tenacity cross, and protection circle. So for example, when you're going against this team, let's say you're running Darth Revan or Trey Elite or something like you saw at the beginning of the video, and you do not land a shock on either one of these characters, then your counter will likely not work. It will fall apart very quickly. And so with Kylo Ren Supreme Leader, I'd recommend full tenacity on your tanks. Then if you're running, if you don't have Supreme Leader, I would suggest all 6 of these mods to be HP. You can either do a primary stat HP with a fast speed secondary, or speed here, but all 6 of these should be HP with HP percentage on the primaries on all of them. You want this guy to be as healthy as possible. His protection doesn't have to be that vast, but you want his health pool to be absolutely off the charts. And then First Order Stormtrooper, he doesn't really necessarily need to have the tenacity be this high. You could run him faster with a speed arrow if you want, with a protection primary on the triangle, cross, and circle. You could even run HP, you could run defense, you can run a speed set, but the faster he goes, the faster he can put up the taunt, because in a crew lead, he does not start with pre-taunt. Like Kylo Supreme Leader, he will start with pre-taunt. Crew, he will not. So the faster he gets to his turn, the faster he's going to taunt, and with that taunt provides TM to your team. And so I would probably recommend 4 speed mods and 2 tenacity, or 4 speed mods and 2 defense or 2 HP to get to that spot. If you don't have to run him fairly fast, but probably like a plus 100 speed would be ideal for Faust. This is a typical Padme team that you're going to see, but again, mine's not perfectly modded because mods are not, the easiest things to get. But I have 4 health mods, 2 defense, with a mixture of HP and protection. This does work very well, but I would personally recommend HP percentage on the primary. I'd recommend HP, and then HP. So this will eventually be replaced by an HP percentage. This is under Padme lead. This would be different under a Jedi Knight Revan lead for the modding of GK. but I will get to that when I get to the Jedi faction. I do like having some defense mods on him, so you can do one of two things for GK. This is under Padme lead. You can run full HP, meaning all 6, or you can run this 4 and 2 that I have, but focus on the HP percentage primary stat, and try not to 6-dot mod anything that has less than 15 speed. Of course, sometimes you're not going to get those, but that is just my recommendation. And of course, defense secondaries are fairly important, and defense is nice. Next, we have Geonosians. I know Brood Alpha is not a tank. She's a support, but of course, this is the tank. Geonosian Brute, as you can see, tank Geonosian Separatist. So I will be going over Geonosian Brood Alpha, as she's technically kind of in the tank category. I would recommend all 6 of these being HP, and try to get her as tanky as possible. Therefore, she can tank a lot of stuff. So she does provide a lot of extra protection. So this right here is 15,000 protection, as well as the health steal is pretty big. So the reason why you want her to be very HP oriented is because of the health equalization and stuff like that. And if you're running Geonosian Brood Alpha under a Darth Revan lead for the Rey counter, or in fact a Kylo counter, the tankier that Brood Alpha is, the more likely she's going to pull off that higher banner and survivability rate. So if your Brood Alpha is not tanky enough, then Kylo Ren will kill Brute on the initial stun, and then they're going to go after Thrawn, and you will die immediately. But if she can survive that stun, then when he uses the AoE, that is when the survivability counts. Sunfac is, I don't really have a specific recommendation for Sunfac. I personally just run him with speed and tankiness. Okay, so Jedi. You're going to see Farm Boy Luke there. That's just a placeholder for Jedi Knight Luke. I will go into that team in a bit. So as for the original Jedi team right in the middle, this is something that you're probably going to run in the early parts of the game. But as you progress, GK now goes to your Padme team or a different team. You don't really see him all that often in a Jedi Knight Revan team, but having him in a Jedi Knight Revan team, you just want him to be really tanky. Speed is also pretty good on him, because the sooner he goes, the faster he can run his call to assist right here. But pretty much, I mean, modding him like this with more protection focus than HP for Jedi Revan, as well as speed, would be probably my recommendation for Jedi Knight Revan lead. So this team, and remember this is Jedi Knight Luke in place, Obi-Wan Kenobi should probably mod for a good amount of tankiness, as well as some decent speed and a potency, some potency added. The reason why you want some potency added is because you want to apply those mind tricks, and get those ability blocks and turn meter reduction on the opponent's SLKR. So I would recommend some protection as much as you can, and some potency. Of course, mine's not ready yet because I don't have Jedi Knight Luke, but I'm on my way to getting that. But yeah, just add some potency and get him as tanky as possible. I'll probably recommend or get some HP, some defense on him, and just get him a lot healthier than where I have him right now. But you want him to be fairly tanky for that, so he can survive and get that ability block off. Night Sisters. The only tank for Night Sisters is Zombie, and basically you want her to be a big nuisance. So the faster you can get her, the better, as well as the healthier with HP. First things first, I'm just going to mention, do not focus on your protection for the Night Sisters. Focus on their HP added stats, because when they die and come back, their protection is gone forever, but their HP is going to be at 100%, especially Daka. But zombies are very important. Obviously, I have not 6E'd my stats, and this is not ideal, but I would recommend 4 speed mods and 2 HP mods. Obviously, mine's not optimized for a proper zombie, but I am doing with what I have for my current mod situation. I would recommend probably plus 120, 115 additional speed to try to get her as fast as possible, but try to get her as healthy as possible. So you want a primary set of HP, a primary set of HP, and a primary set of HP with 2 HP mods and 4 speed. That is what I recommend, because the more time she goes, yeah, you guys know how zombie works. Just being a nuisance. So I'm not going to spend too much time on Karth and Phoenix because, well, it's Karth and Phoenix. But Zalbar, I will talk about. Zalbar, I would recommend, he does not need to be relatively fast, but I would recommend a crit avoidance arrow with protection on all 3 of these, with some decent HP, and emphasis on protection. The reason why I would focus on protection for Zalbar is because he gains protection back on damage over time dots. So as the bottom of the description, you can see Mission and Zalbar recover 10% protection. So they're not re-getting their HP, and that way I'd focus on protection on him and Mission. Juhani, yeah, I'm not really going to talk about Juhani. If you did farm her up, I would stop for now. She's not useful in the later parts of the game, so just move on from Juhani. Phoenix, well, I did go over the Rebel faction and Kenobi. I would probably recommend the exact same thing. So, getting to the nitty-gritty of Rey. This is a team you might see all the time, and a tank or 2 you might see with Rey is Malak or L3. So Malak under Rey can be modded for a few different things. Speed is not all too important on Malak, but I would probably focus on your protection and critical avoidance and tenacity. Mine is not modded for that because I do not use Malak for a Rey team all that often. I sometimes throw him in there, but I have mine modded for a different counter, and I'll talk about that later. L3, you want her to be very healthy and tanky with some good defensive stats. She does get, at 3 mark stats, she gains 100% defense. I'm sorry, at 2 mark stacks, she gains 100% defense and she gains critical avoidance. So I do like having a little bit of defensive mods on her for that extra bonus. So I run 4 defense and 2 tenacity. She does not need very much speed. As you can see here, whenever a droid or scoundrel ally takes damage, she gets turn meter. Obviously, there are not any droids or scoundrels on this team. This is just an example of a team you might see. But relatively tanky is what I would recommend. Tenacity is not all that important on her because, for example, in this team she cleanses scoundrel allies, and being that she is the only scoundrel ally on the team, she will cleanse herself. So having L3 there, tenacious or not, she will cleanse herself and keep the taunt up. So as we move down to JTR, so this is, if you do not have Galactic Legend Rey, this is a team you might see, given that you do have Resistance heroes. You're either going to run Finn or Holdo, probably Finn in this lineup. I like to run Finn at a decent amount of speed because the faster he goes, the faster he can use this ability, as well as some tankiness as well. I do like running Tenacity as much as I can on every single one of my tanks. Tenacity is a stat that I find very useful. For example, if Finn is ability blocked or shocked, he's not going to be able to taunt or stuff like that. So having that tenacity is pretty big. But let's say you don't have the resistance heroes, you might run into something, or you might run something like this. This is kind of a newer player's Rey team, and if you don't have Holdo, you're probably going to run Stick Rey. But Holdo I have modded for extremely tanky with some potency as well, because I like to be able to land the daze. So I have her with an HP set, a defense set, and a potency set with an emphasis on protection all the way around. So then we're going to get into this standard Darth Revan team right here. This is the double tank with one pre-taunting tank. So Malak, depends on how you want to use Malak. For example, back when Darth Revan was meta, it was all about Darth Revan's speed. Everything was about Darth Revan's speed. If you imagine, so the absolutely optimized modding for Malak and Darth Revan and BSF is if you had a very, very, very fast Darth Malak, being that he is 1 speed faster than Darth Revan, so he can clear the taunt, the Sith Trooper's taunt with shock, and then Darth Revan, being 1 speed slower, can then AoE fear on the leader, being that the starting pre-taunting tank taunt is gone. So you can run him either 1 speed faster than Darth Revan, or you can run him very, very, very tanky and very tenacious. You can also run a critical avoidance arrow on him. Again, these mods are for a Supreme Leader Kylo Ren counter, which I'll get to later, and I'll go in depth on my Malak modding. But you can run a critical avoidance arrow if you want here with a lot of tenacity. For example, if you place this exact team on defense and somebody's wanting to use Padme against it, if your Malak is extremely tanky and very, very, very tenacious, then Jedi Knight Anakin is going to have a very hard time landing that buff or heal immunity on him. So I find tenacity is very terrific on Malak, as well as critical avoidance might be very useful on him too. Sith Empire Trooper, he has a standard plus 100% defense, so I would recommend a lot of defense mods on him as well as some protection. So I personally run absolute full defense. You can only have either health or protection on this one, but on all mods that have the ability to run defense percentage, that is what I run. And he is very, 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 very tanky. This is a Sith Empire Trooper modded for a Supreme Leader counter, so I will get into that in a little bit. But you can run him with a lot of protection, given that he's a pre-dawning tank. But defense is probably the highest sort of relevance to Sith Empire Trooper. So next we're going to start getting into my counters. So this is higher division, Kylo Ren type stuff. This Sith Empire Trooper and Darth Malak are modded specifically to counter Kylo Ren. And so now I'm going to talk about my modding for Malak. So my Malak is 315 speed with 121% potency. Tenacity wasn't focusing on it, but he has a little bit of additional tenacity. So I have I have a speed arrow with one of the highest potency secondaries that I have in my roster, as well as I have protection with some potency secondaries. I'm running a potency primary, and then protection with some potency secondaries, and then 2 very fast potency mods. These are very specific to clear that taunt from a pre-taunting tank of First Order. Remember that Trail Lead or Darth Revan Lead provide additional potency. And so given this 40, if you're running Trail Lead, that's 40% plus his 120, that's 160% potency. This is, I guess, 161% potency. Imagine my Darth Malak trying to clear the taunt of my First Order Stormtrooper, which has 160% tenacity versus 161%. That would be very difficult to do, and therefore I would recommend that when you're doing that counter, look at the 2 tanks on your Supreme Leader team. And so I would go for the original taunt of Kylo Ren unmasked and go for his clearing of the taunt and shock on him. And then I would isolate my First Order Stormtrooper with Traya. So when you're going against that team, you definitely want to go for the character that has the least amount of tenacity, so you can have a higher chance of clearing that taunt and landing that shock. You don't hit shock, you lose. It's that simple. That's why tenacity is so big on tanks in this current meta. Tenacity is king. It used to be speed is king. This current meta, tenacity is king. I'm telling you. Like, you put tenacity on Rey, Vader's going to have a very difficult time. I'm just letting you know. Sith Empire Trooper, again, this is purely modded for defense because of that extra defense and because Kylo is an offense-based attack damage dealer. He does not do special damage. That would be resistance. But his armor is very high, and therefore I run him that way. The next counter is also one that is versus Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. This is one that does not use Traya, and it uses Darth Revan lead. Do remember that Darth Revan provides ferocity for his team, and as you can see here, each ferocity stack is 8% potency. So when Malak is going, he does have 5 stacks at the beginning of his turn, which is 40%. So that is the same. And if he has more ferocity, that's more potency, which is more chance of landing that shock. So both of these counters do work. I just really, really like that Vader one because it's very fun and you get to one-shot Supreme Leader. So as we move on to the Sith team at the bottom, you're going to notice that this is kind of a standard trade team back in the day. Normally people don't run this exact comp anymore. But typically, like versus Geonosian team, you're going to have Traya, Scion, sometimes Nihilus, sometimes not. For me, I'll just use these 2. And basically, Scion is the king of taking the hits from Geonosians. How I would recommend you mod him is pure HP with some additional tenacity and potency. But the biggest kicker is a crit avoidance arrow. Given that Traya's lead offers 40%, he will have 75% crit avoidance. So you are running a crit avoidance arrow with HP everywhere. The reason why you want HP is because when they're attacking out of turn, they are debuffed, they're damaging themselves and healing you, and you cannot heal your own protection, you can only heal your HP with Traya's lead. And so that is why Traya Scion can duo almost any, if not every single Geonosian team there is. So now I would really like to discuss teams that utilize Watt. For those of you who do not know, Watt has 3 different techs. This middle one at the start of each turn, recover 30% protection and dispel debuffs and tanks taunt while they have protection, not while they have HP. So if you are going to run certain teams with Watt, I would highly recommend that you focus the emphasis on protection. For example, this team, if I were to run Watt with my General Grievous, I would like to have my Magna Guard as tanky as possible with more protection than this. I would change out this critical avoidance and give him all protection, everything. That way he will be taunting very, very, very often. And also this, again, make sure your Magna Guard is tankier than B2, because if he's not, and if B2 is tankier than Magna, Watt will give the tank tech to B2 as he is a tank, and he will get the taunt, and that is exactly what you do not want at all. Again, that goes with this team. This team I have run quite a bit in my Grand Arenas. L3 is given the tank tech, and she taunts all the time. and she'll be able to dispel her own debuffs, and it's it's a big nuisance to some teams, especially Darth Revan lead versus Rey. This team is also a really good example of a nuisance team. When you run one tank underneath Newt, it will go to Zalbar. Zalbar will gain a lot of defense because he is going to have a taunt that cannot be dispelled while he has protection, unless you land shock, and that's why tenacity is so big. The more times he is hit, the more stacking defense he gets. Therefore, Watt with Zalbar is a fantastic duo, as well as you can give the HP or weapons tech to Count Dooku and Nuka Gunray respectively. And then Droideka is hiding underneath everybody and just one-shots characters. So I love this team. I use it quite a bit. So this is just another example of Watt with tanks. So this last section is examples of you not wanting to use Watt with a tank. Do not use Watt with these two teams. They do not work. For example, if you put your Watt tank tech, or if this is on defense, Watt will give the tank tech to Zombie. The first time she dies, the tank tech is gone. So I do not recommend Watt with your Night Sisters. As well as this Darth Revan team, Watt will give the tank tech to Malak. Malak does not have a protection pool, therefore he will not start with a pre-taunting tank, and therefore his first tech is useless. If you do want to run Sith Empire Trooper on this team instead of Marauder, you can, and therefore you can give the tank tech to Sith Empire Trooper and he will taunt, but he's already pre-taunting, so there's not really a point in doing that under a Darth Revan team. And also, Watt will cleanse the ferocity stacks, and Darth Revan feeds off ferocity. So do not use Watt in these two teams. I do not recommend it. So I did notice I left out JTR. Personally, you can run her for different ways. You can run her full HP. I like to run her with speed and some defense with some potency on her cross. Therefore, she can land her mind tricks and stuff. But I like to run her pretty fast, pretty tanky with some potency. It's the main thing. Other than that, that would conclude our tank video. I know I left out some tanks like Stormtrooper Han or Shore Trooper or Baze. But I personally do not know much about those characters as I do not have them geared. So feel free to mention some tips and tricks about those characters down in the comment section for those of you wondering about those tanks. If you do have any other questions about tanks in general, feel free to reach out to me on my Discord, which is in the description. The link is, or you can ask me in the comment section. I'm more than happy to answer some questions. But yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you who lasted. I believe it's going to be a 40-minute video, so thank you. Thank you so much. And let me know if you want me to do any other videos, whether that be attackers or supports or healers or stuff like that. All right, thanks guys.